Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Holy Rose Podcast. It is Rob and
Rachel.
And this is our finale. Can you believe it? We are 12 episodes down, including this one. Can you imagine we have made it this far?
And you're still with us. Yeah.
Somehow. You're still watching.
We haven't been canceled yet. Yeah. So here we are.
There is every episode. We wonder, is this the one?
Is this it? Is this the moment?
And we have survived. We have survived.
Yeah. Until now.
This
may be it.
I hope we don't end it for you all. My gosh.
We will just blame it on our miraculous guests here if we are canceled going forward. But we do want to remind you about our upcoming annual conference live recording happening on Sunday nights, and we do ask that you register for that. We'll have some fantastic merch, maybe a clergy stole or two. We're not sure. You've got to show up and see if that happens.
Please no.
But anyways, please register and let us know you're coming. We can fit all those seats into that room, and we can enjoy a conversation with Caleb Wheat there in the Northern Kentucky to talk about church planting and all the kind of the new stuff happening in our conference. I think it's going to be a great time.
Yep. Looking forward to it. Hope you join us there.
Hecklers allowed, I guess, but we'll have bouncers at the door.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Well, for our final episode for season 1, we thought it would be wonderful, helpful, maybe life-giving in this season to have sort of a debrief conversation about General Conference. You may have listened to our episode a few weeks ago from Bishop Willimon, kind of the precursor to General Conference. And now we're joined today with two of our pastors who served on our delegation. We're so excited to meet with them today and for you to hear from them. So guests, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves? Tell us your name and where you are serving.
Well, I'm Tami Coleman, pastor at Hanson United Methodist Church in the great Pennyroyal District, western part of the state. And I had the privilege of leading the delegation and being the head and the chair or whatever you want to say, and just a great group to work with these last, year, really, in preparation for General Conference. And so just thankful for that opportunity.
What does the head of the delegation do? That's kind of the question I've had. Are you like the head honcho? Do you parade them in? Do you make them sit and make them behave?
Do you give them homework?
And I make them follow behind me wherever I go.
They need that.
They lined up.
They part.
We were in timeout sometimes.
That's
some
right.
of us,
Exactly.
Whatever
Yes.
Tami wanted to do.
Yeah. No, it's really just organizing and making sure we all know what we're supposed to know. Part of that is I am now on the SEJ Committee on Episcopacy, and so Michael Watts and I is the lead laity and clergy. So we make decisions around bishops and things like that. There were some other responsibilities that I had at General Conference because of that role, but mainly it was just touching base, communicating. We did WhatsApp and had about 1,000 messages a day of us communicating with each other. So, yeah.
So we have the head honcho here and the
caboose, the alternate.
Yes. What you have here are the clergy bookends of the delegation. Tami was elected first, clergy. I was elected last. I joke I'm least among the apostles on the delegation, as Paul would put it. But my name's Jay Smith, and this next month, actually, it'll be 40 years when I went to License to Preach school.
Wow.
So you're supposed to say, you don't look like...
Not
You
at
were
all.
5 years old.
Thank you. I
when
appreciate that.
happened, Yeah.
So, but it is 40 years. I've been a United Methodist pastor, grew up in Western Kentucky near the great Hanson United Methodist Church in Madisonville. But I currently serve, thankfully, as the Owensboro and South Central District Superintendent. That's 22 counties and 79 churches, from Union County down to Casey County. And I'm blessed to serve in that way.
Yeah.
So it's good to be here.
Yeah.
And does that part of the state have the best barbecue or not? What do you think?
Owensboro, it's in the running. It's in the running.
Okay.
But I would say, we were joking. The only reason I'm here, I know it makes sense why Tami's here. She was elected first, and she was a real delegate. I was a provisional delegate. And I've said this to Tami publicly before, and I want to say it at the get-go, because some people might be wondering, what's Jay Smith doing on this thing? He was elected last. He was an observer for the most part. Well, the only reason I had any role was because Tami and the delegation said we could be full participants. They didn't have to do that. That was the spirit of our delegation from the get-go. And I can't tell you how much that meant to all of us who were provisionals. And then to go to General Conference, they didn't have to let any of us be seated. Didn't have to. And we would have just, that's fine, because we weren't elected as primary delegates. But to do that, so I want to say that again, and folks don't know that. I didn't know the ins and outs of that really until I was on the delegation in the role I was. So you got the bookends, you got the first and the last, and we'll do the best we can.
Well, we appreciate you both being here so much. I can already tell, from someone who's never experienced General Conference, I know it had to be so much work to prepare and to feel like you're representing all of Kentucky well. And so I love that that was your approach to the spirit of our delegation of, we're going to share this work, we're going to do this together, we're kind of one in this. And just thank you on behalf of maybe just myself and us.
The Holy Rollers podcast. Thank you.
For serving in that way. So many months of preparation and prayer. And I was very proud to have you all on our delegation. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it was a privilege.
I mean, it really is a privilege. I mean, to know that we are representing Kentucky, and how when I would interact and meet new people and they say, so where are you from? Because that's the question we ask. And, I would say Kentucky, and just know that I represented a lot of people behind,
absolutely.
That was us there. So it was, in that way, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, Tami, I know you have been to General Conference before. Can you just share briefly about your experience of being there this year? Maybe I've read a lot, I've heard a lot about just the atmosphere and how it might have been different from the past or not. But if you were there in 2019, I know you shared that you were at jurisdiction in 2022. If you could just kind of start us off by sharing, what did it feel like to be there this year?
Yeah. So I was an observer in 2019 in St. Louis. And so, the floor of the conference was down below, and then observers were kind of around. So kind of looking down upon the whole situation. And we know it was just it was intense. And I just had a knot in my stomach the entire time. It was hard to watch in many ways. Our beloved church just go at each other in ways. And so I'll never forget a colleague of ours. We were standing up and she asked me, "Is this the will of God?" And I was like, so maybe I got what maybe I personally thought, but I don't know that this is the will of God. I don't know that this is the way this is supposed to happen. And so that was very intense. I thought jurisdictional conference went the other way, and it felt, for me and where I am, it felt just as contentious in some ways. Both felt very agenda-driven. Like, we're going to get these things marked off, and whoever has the majority is going to accomplish those things. And I thought that was hard. And so I felt a sense of maybe pulling back in the middle with this in Charlotte at General Conference, that there were agendas, but yet there were also opportunities where I could glimpse maybe we can really begin to move forward in what is next. And so that I don't think I've seen the best of General Conference and Jurisdictional Conference in these last two times, but I have hope for what's to come. So
yeah. Thank you. How about you, Dr. Jay? I know you were an observer for part of it, but what your experience of just the atmosphere at General Conference this year?
Yeah. Well, I'd never participated from start to finish. I went all 2 weeks very intentionally because I just had never experienced that. I'd been an observer a couple of times. I volunteered 4 years out of seminary when it was in Louisville. We hosted, so I had not been to a full General Conference, and I wanted that experience. And it's it's overwhelming in a beautiful way because the diversity. It's like being at the United Nations of our church, and I mean, I'm getting chills just telling you about it because the people. There's not a lot of folks that are not necessarily look like us, to be in that setting just filled my soul and just nourished my spirit, and I'm so proud when I'm in settings like that. And I, as a superintendent, I'm in settings like that from time to time because we gather in places and you see the diversity. And so it was just it was beautiful and it was life-giving. And I was so proud, and I pinch myself sometimes like, how did I get here? How am I part of this? And so that was, what a gift. I mean, it's such a gift. Go. I mean, even if you don't ever get to sit on the floor, which I didn't for many years, go just to experience who we are. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a glimpse of the kingdom.
I was just about to say, for such is the kingdom of God, right? The diversity,
So where we were sitting on the floor, we were in section C, so A, B, C. We were right in front of the bishops. And we were making sure they behaved.
That's right.
Yeah.
Someone has to.
Exactly. And so, like, we were row 2. Row 1 was all of the West Ohio, East Ohio delegation. And then right behind me was Robert and Marilyn from, Central Appalachian Missionary Conference. And so it was just I thought each day coming in, just a reminder of the kingdom and the fullness of what all it looks like.
Yeah, of who we are.
Yeah.
Can I tag on that? Just a short story. The Friday morning, that's when I tagged in to be on the floor. And because I don't know that I'll ever do that again, I got there early. I mean, as soon as they opened where they would check you in, I was there. And there wasn't a lot of people there yet. The choir's practicing and a few people mingling around. I got on the wrong row. I actually got on Central Appalachia's row because I was just on the wrong row. But I met a lady from Sierra Leone. She was there. And I said, where were you from? Sierra Leone. I said, what's your name? My name's Jay. And she said, my name is Edna. My grandmother's name was Edna that I never knew. That was my mom's mom. And I said, can I take your picture? I've never met another Edna. And here's an Edna from Sierra Leone. And I've got her picture. I won't get it out for you. I'll show you after we record. But just snippets of that. And it's like you get a sense of, wow, God is very present here in these interactions and these relationships. And so anyway, I knew that we were Sierra Leone because I was in the wrong row. That Friday, they had to make me move up.
I make fun of a lot of folks. I'm going to admit this is a very confessional podcast. I don't think I've ever seen that many selfies in one room before, like posted on social media. Every bishop, I feel like, had their selfies going on. And I was like, they're kicking a high gear here. But then at the end, like, once I got over myself and kind of was able to engage in healthy social media after a while, I was like, gosh, this is beautiful. Because you just see all the many hues of who we are as a denomination. And just watching from a live stream from my office, the worship that was going on just moved me to tears many times. And I'm just watching on a computer screen. And so I'm sure being in that room had to just be this overwhelming, hey, no matter where we may be as a denomination, we're here and we're present and we're together in this. And gosh, that's just beautiful. So thank y'all.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, embodying the work of Christ, what the love of Christ does, removing, it's almost like human nature and our sinfulness has this propensity to sort and to divide and to stick with like. And what Christ does is comes in and tears down these barriers. Whether it be, what does Paul say? Male, female, Jew, Gentile, slave free, whether it's ethnic barriers or language barriers so for everyone to be gathered in that room and worshiping together.
And the worship was
just
phenomenal. The preaching. And we started every day that way, an hour and a half.
Wow.
And there wasn't a clunker in the bun. I mean, it was just amazing.
Tell us later who was.
Who are the fillers?
So if you find where those are at, they are somewhere. And bless yourself every day. Listen to one of those sermons every day for a while. They just were amazing.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Well done. It was well done.
Well, I feel like we're getting there and kind of already answering my next question is just what gives you hope right now for the United Methodist Church or for being United Methodist?
No, you go ahead, Jay.
Well, I think what gives me hope is that the church, really, we've always been, when we think about it. You all are pastoring churches, and you probably are pastoring purple churches. And what gives me hope is that there still exists that possibility that we can differ on many things, but we can come together, and our identity in Christ Jesus supersedes all those other things. I mean, that's, for me, that gives me hope. And to experience that, I experience that right now in this room with you all. We didn't go into detail. We didn't card each other about, we didn't even talk about what's your position. We got to be sure can we be in the same room to talk about this? Because you haven't told me where you are on this. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Not because it's not important, but it's not more important than the unity that we experience in Jesus together. And we've done that for a long time as United Methodists. So the hope I have is that we experience that. I experience that on the cabinet all the time. We're very different. But I love every one of those people. And Bishop Fairley just set such a marvelous tone. And I'm thankful I'm on the most diverse cabinet in the history of the Kentucky Conference right now, if you include the extended cabinet.
Right.
Yeah, praise God.
It is the most diverse. I'm thankful for that. That's it. And the delegation, and Tami set such an amazing tone. We had the covenant. I meant to bring the covenant because we could reference things. We lived out the hope that I know I experienced, what I want to live into. Yeah. We live it now, but for some reason sometimes we don't acknowledge that. We don't realize that's what gives us hope. So anyway, let me stop there. But
well, that sounds like that covenant, that hope that you were living out. That's almost the hope that we have for the Kentucky Annual Conference, right? That we can figure out this together, to stay in the family and to love one another.
The world needs it.
In spite of, because of, we are different. We are,
Well, and that's where my hope is, relationships.
Yeah.
And it's always, I always go back to that, is how how we do things is more important to me than what we actually do.
Yeah.
The spirit in which we do it. How do we preserve our relationships in the midst of all of this? And so, and I think that takes a lot of intentionality, and it takes a lot of honest conversations. And I was so blessed with meeting new people. I wanted to do the relationship thing. I mean, it's like an annual conference. We get together to be together, and we do a little business over here, And so the same thing, I loved meeting new people from different places and developing relationships and seeing the things that we do have in common. And because nobody asked me what I thought about certain issues.
Never.
I mean, they didn't.
No time.
Yeah.
And it was just good to talk about the things that we did have in common. And so to develop those relationships. And then, we're so connectional. We know each other. I mean, so catching up with people as well. Yeah. And that was just like, I'm there all day, that's what I'm about. Yeah. But the thing that gave me hope in the business side of things was actually when we amended the social principle on marriage. I felt like that was a huge step. A huge step toward honoring where we all are and compromising. And so adding in the phrase, between one man and one woman, or two consenting adults. And so, and I know in maybe the outside world that seems, like too far of a compromise, or we don't say anything at all. But I felt like this, for the spirit of where we are, that was a hope of, we really do want to be a place where we're all at the table and we
Together,
all have
yeah.
voice. And so, and that was the only social principle amended, and there was very little debate about it.
Yeah.
And a delegate from Africa, a female delegate from
yes.
Africa.
I was going to say, it was a
offered that.
non-U.S. centric delegate that brought it
Offered
forth
that.
to help lead the way for
Yeah.
us.
So I feel like the spirit that I sensed was, we want to have room for folks. We want to make room for folks. And somebody might think that's a bridge too far, adding that. But the reality is, some of the language could have been removed. The votes were there.
Right.
The power to do that was there.
Exactly.
Wow.
But it was held in restraint, in my opinion. And no group said to another group, we can no longer be with you. Here's your way out. This is the door.
Yeah.
This is how you can leave. That was not the spirit. And so, Tami said, I mean, some people might think, wow, that's just horrible. No, it provides space and protection. Nobody's going to be penalized, whether you agree or don't agree. To me, that's a really beautiful place.
The word acknowledgement comes to my mind. Like there was just acknowledgement of each other, of this is where we are,
Right.
and we have this heart and this spirit and this hope that we can make room for everybody, including the traditionalists, right? Including progressives, including the moderates. Like this is our family, and we want to focus on everybody being a part of this relationship. I read an article of someone who covered General Conference who's not United Methodist, and they didn't really know much about United Methodist. And their summary of 3 things she learned about United Methodist. The first is that they were very nice. Like she got lost. Someone gave her directions.
Nice is a cousin to the fruit of the Spirit.
This is true. But the directions ended up being wrong. And this delegate felt so badly that she sought out this reporter later and apologized for giving her wrong directions. And she's like, wow, they're very nice. 2, they love to break out into song. That just brought so much joy.
Whether you can sing or not.
Yeah, they love to just break out into song. There's songs and hymns and all kinds of stuff. And then 3, they're very methodical. They vote on a lot of things, amendments to amendments. And I started weeping, just thinking, like, these are my people. We are nice. We break out into song and we're methodical.
Yes.
That person was very polite. I
They
appreciate
were
that.
very polite. But you're just talking about the relationships and focusing on what we have in common, and 95% of what it means to to follow Jesus in this Wesleyan way, with diverse people from all over the world, making room for one another, because such is the kingdom of God. Right. And hearing you all describe that does give me so much hope. I'm wondering, as you came home and I know you've addressed district conferences and things like that, I'm wondering what's the biggest question that you've received about the votes or the proceedings or your experience. What's been the biggest question from the Kentucky Annual Conference that you've received?
Well, we have opened up, we're doing a webinar in a couple weeks and trying to get people's questions around that. I think what I have seen is a question around disaffiliation and what, we intentionally ask people to wait till General Conference and see what actually happens before they make a decision. And now decisions have been made, and if they feel like they can't live within that, that there would be a place for them to leave. And that, of course, did not get passed at General Conference. And so I think that there's a lot of angst in the Kentucky Conference around that, and a lot of uncertainty. And really, that's beyond the delegation's purview around that. I know, districts, And so, our conference trustees are looking at that, and administrative services, and I think they'll have some things that they can share, shortly around that. But I think that is what I have heard. I was able to attend 2 district conferences because, how great is district conference? You get to go.
It's on your calendar.
Right, exactly. And so,
Christmas, birthday, district conference.
That was the questions that people came to me around, some of that. So, Jay, I know you've probably gotten the earful with several things.
Well, I got back from General Conference on Saturday. I think it was Saturday. It may have been Friday. I don't remember. It was a blur.
Whirlwind,
I left on
sure.
Friday afternoon. I think I got home Saturday. And Sunday morning, I Zoomed worship. I'll just confess, I could not go. I just was peopled out.
Yeah.
I was just conversationed out. And I set out. And after about lunchtime, I get a text. Bing. And one of the churches has already voted that morning. And they use the language disaffiliation, although it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. How can we leave? Yeah. My stomach just knotted up. I had a little PTSD because I did 31 called church conferences during the season of disaffiliation. Every one of them heartbreaking, and in my mind, in my understanding, totally unnecessary. Because I don't have to agree with you, right? I mean, in my way of thinking, it was not necessary, and so I had a little, here we go. And is it here we go again? And I just wish folks could maybe step back and take a deep breath. And there's not a paragraph 2553, right. There's not one. And in my observation of that, it's because no group is asking another group, here's your way out. We don't want people to disaffiliate. And there is space in the discipline now for everyone to stay at the table and to be part of the family. There really is. Unless, of course, you think, I can't be with Tami. I can't be in this relationship. And I just wish that wasn't the way people saw that. Nobody was wanting anybody. So there's no new paragraph for people to exit because the spirit in Charlotte was not, we need some folks to exit right now.
Yeah.
And it does. So that's the biggest, it's the hardest question. It's the biggest one right now. And, Tami can't answer it. I can't answer it. But our conference, they're going to deliver, they're going to take their time. They're going to follow the discipline just like we did with 2553. We can't do anything but that.
Well, because there's always been a way to leave the denomination. It involved a bit more money, surrendering property. And, my understanding was like a much longer legal process than what the disaffiliation paragraph provided. I'm going to jump a little bit because I feel like this fits. On one hand, I can sort of understand traditional voices and leaders and pastors who are really disappointed or really frustrated and angry right now because, they weren't one of the however many that did leave.
Right.
They said, okay, we're going to stick it out. We're going to see what happens in general conference and then go from there. I've heard some colleagues say, I feel like I was misled or I was lied to. And it's like, well, no one really knew exactly what was going to happen. We all sort of were entering, cautiously
territory.
Optimistic, right? Of this is new territory. Something might happen, maybe not. And so on one hand, I can understand their frustrations, right? And I don't want anyone to feel trapped or stuck in this family because that's not a mutual relationship of love and respect.
Right.
And you don't want anyone to feel stuck with us. But I also don't want anyone to leave, right? No. And so I'm wondering if you all have just a word of encouragement or hope for traditionalist Kentucky United Methodists right now who are feeling that way. Is there a word of encouragement? You kind of say, just give it some space. There may be a process, but let's take a deep breath. Although it feels like our church changed instantly, I'm willing to bet it hasn't really in Kentucky much, right? So is there a word of just encouragement that you could offer our traditional friends in Kentucky right now?
Yeah. So, Jim and I have this conversation a lot, as you can imagine.
Your husband.
Yeah, my husband. Yes, sorry. We're both clergy couple. Yeah. And so, we've had this time of discernment for the last few years. And I hear when people say, I feel like my church has left me. And I know what they mean by that. Like, this is what we have always thought and believed. And we've been supported by our book of discipline in that. And now it has shifted. But I want to say what I have come down to is this is what's been in the Book of Discipline has not been our reality for a long time. And so we've kind of lived into where we're going now. You know, there are other conferences that have allowed same-sex marriages. We have other conferences that have ordained LGBTQ persons, and the world has not fallen in. You know, the church continues to minister in their context. And for us here in Kentucky, we can live with this. You know, this is our family. Like I try to share with my church family that my membership is in the Kentucky Annual Conference. And so that's why annual conference is so meaningful. And even district conference is so meaningful. It's because it's our chance as a people for us, our church, to get together. And so, and the relationships that we have built over the years, I mean, those have not changed, right? And so, like, I love that this week our youngest is graduating, and I can't tell you how many people have never met him, but they're like, I can't believe he's graduating, because they're like, where'd those 3 boys go that moved to Kentucky all those years ago? Because we love and we support each other, and we're in this church family together. And that's why I think it's been so painful for the disaffiliation, is because of our relationship.
It's awful.
And so we have felt that at that conference level.
Yeah.
So I want to say, for our local churches, your church has not changed. It has not. You still set the tone in your local church of how you are being called to minister in your context, in your situation.
Yes.
And you get to say, that is your local family, and you've all disagreed all this time.
Yeah.
You know, there's some of you that vote one way and some of you vote the other, and you've loved each other through that. And so, I would just hang on.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And in Kentucky, most of our churches are traditional churches, which is fine. Nothing that was done in Charlotte jeopardizes that. And pastors, any of them, and I've heard from some, and I've been talking to pastors, and folks are hurting. People are leaving without even a conversation. It's like, I thought, as your pastor, I thought we had a relationship, and they're getting ghosted. They're just not showing up. They're turning in their keys if they had keys to the church, and without a word. And that is so hurtful and painful. And I know the pastors are hurting, and I know probably they won't believe this. I'm a district superintendent, but I can tell you this. I'll start my 12th year on the cabinet this conference. I have never trusted a group of people more than my colleagues on the cabinet. And if someone's hurting out there, I mean this with everything in me. Call one of us. Call your superintendent. We care. We don't care about your position. We do care about your soul and your heart that you need to be guarding right now and protecting. Guess what? You don't have to answer every call that comes to you. You don't have to enter into every conversation that somebody wants you to enter into immediately on their timetable. You just don't. All of us are processing this. We need to guard our hearts and our souls. We need to be as kind to ourselves as we are to the complete strangers that might show up at the door of our churches.
Yeah, that's good.
And so it's very real, but nothing that happened in Charlotte keeps a traditional church from being traditional. And I want to say, we don't, some are celebrating, some are rejoicing with this. And I don't want to stifle that at all. Some are very happy with what happened. But if we really want an inclusive church where we don't want to show the door to any particular group, traditionalists, centrists, progressives, all of us got to be careful where we spike the ball.
Yeah.
And if we need to resist that temptation, and we need to resist doing our happy dance, because we need to just know that we are a big family. We're a big table. And just because I personally might have sensed some victory or something I felt really needed to happen, it doesn't negate the fact that I have persons that I'm still in community and covenant with,
Right.
that I do not want to jeopardize those relationships.
Both things can be true.
Both things can be true.
We can grieve with those
Absolutely.
who
They can
grieve,
we can
rejoice with
Yeah.
those
Bingo.
who rejoice, but also humble ourselves to that. Go back to that word
Yes.
acknowledgement of just acknowledging one another around the table and humble ourselves to consider their needs.
Yeah.
Just try just as important as yours. Start there, right? And see, if I think I'm a better pastor, I think I'm a better friend. I know I'm a better mother because I have people in my life who are different than
Yes.
me, right? Who think differently, who pastor differently from me. I don't want to be surrounded in my church by just everybody who thinks and looks like me, right? I think it makes us better when we're challenged to think differently and to listen to one another's life experiences.
Well, and I think, my experience at General Conference, people texted me throughout the whole time, which was so wonderful. I mean, to get texts from back home
it was
and
great.
people from all over, and, we're thinking about you, praying for you. And they would comment on things that were happening, so I knew that they were watching. And, so it felt like we were sharing that together in a sense. And I knew that they were a part of that. But the morning that the vote happened where they removed the language, a good friend of ours actually texted me, and it was interesting because she and I sat next to each other in St. Louis, and we're very different, but we are just good friends. I mean, we've just said we're friends above all. And I remember feeling the pain for her in St. Louis. And so, almost immediately she said, "I'm thinking about you."
Wow.
And I, said back, "But I'm happy for you," and so
That's it.
That'll hit you in the feels,
I just
Tami.
got
That's good. That's good.
I think that's the church. I think
Yeah.
that's,
I mean,
I
like,
think
we're-
that's Jesus right there.
Yeah. And so, she wasn't physically next to me, but in
Right.
that moment, I knew like this is the church, that we don't see eye to eye on this. And what I'm feeling is not what she's feeling right now. But I can rejoice. Isn't that what Paul says? Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with
Grieve.
those who mourn. And
It's in the book.
And and so I think that
That's strong.
is a way that we could actually be a witness in the world right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
Say more about that, Reverend.
I mean, like, in the sense that our world is so polarized right now. You're either on my side or
Preach.
you're not on my side.
And you're an
in
enemy.
my-
You're my
Yes.
enemy now. We just don't
Yes.
disagree. I cannot have a relationship with you.
Yeah.
One of us has got to go. We got to go.
Yeah.
Right.
And the whole cancel, like I just totally cancel you out and I don't listen to anything that you say. What if we could model a way that we deeply disagree, and yet we figure out how to move forward? And what if that is the witness to the world for such a time as this? I think that
That's hope. To me,
That
that
is,
is part of
yeah.
our hope.
Yeah. How do we change that? We almost felt like I was at the 2019 just to observe and to be there. It was right down the road, and it just felt like a battlefield. It felt like we were at war with one another, and if for our family, I sit at the same table with some members of my family, and we vehemently disagree about a lot of things, But I still love them. And I don't view my dining room table as a place in which I want to punch them in the face. Now, there's some times where I want to have a word or two. Yes, I do.
Are we still taping?
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. But I wonder, how do we change our posture? How do we change our view of what we're actually doing together? It's not so much a battlefield of winners and losers, but we are in this holy moment of walking each other home, right? That's kind of the movement where I see the power of the Holy Spirit. But that we got to model a different way, my friends, of what that can look like instead of just mirroring what we're seeing out there. And in this election year, we're about to be at it again. If not, we're already in the middle of it.
We're all dreading it, I would think.
Yeah.
How do we remove ourselves from the battlefield and into the church or whatever other imagery we want to use here? Friends, how do we do that?
Well, my first answer I have several things around this, but my first thing is around how we have structured ourselves.
Yeah.
So even the conversation at General Conference was very legislative. And so is that how we make decisions? It is right now, but is that the best way to make decisions? And I know that is probably not a popular answer, but I just got frustrated around all of the amend,
Tedious.
to close the
Boring.
vote, to
Lord.
and just how we ended up having to treat one another because of that. Like, no, you did not put in the right, request to inquire
You
or
need to sit down.
Yes, and so you have to sit down. I mean, I just
So
felt
the
like
book itself is not Robert's Rules of Order. Do we need a different book to follow?
I remember texting Jim at one point. I don't know who Robert is, but his rules are really stupid.
It's not me. It's not
He
me.
was
all right?
really uptight. I don't know who this dude is.
And so, is there
needs
a
to
better
chill.
way? Is there a
Yeah.
better way? And I know some conferences have moved away from Robert's rules to where we have more discernment and we have more consensus. Because I think when we have to take a vote, and I think we've seen this in a lot of our churches, where a vote had to be taken, it drew the line.
Yeah.
And you couldn't go across the line, And so it does
Casualties.
make winners and losers. And I don't think moving forward, that is the way that we want to continue to be. And so
that's good.
I just throw that out. I mean, that maybe even how we make our decisions needs to be different than what we have always done. And I understand Robert's Rules of Order. I mean, they want people to have a voice, make sure everybody has a voice, and it's not the same people
Yeah.
speaking all the time, but it is the same people speaking most of the time.
That's right. That's right.
And so
The law is meant to do good, right?
It
It's
is.
supposed to, how do we do community together?
Right.
Right. But sometimes it doesn't matter if my name is not in the queue at the right time or
Yes.
can I see the queue or not. Like some of this stuff, I was like, folks, can we move forward together?
Yeah.
I feel like we're nitpicking at each other and it's not very good.
Yeah. And how do we give space for people who are slower processors?
Sure.
Like just to take a breath. Like, wait a minute, let me think about what is the implication around it. And I felt like it was just, and I know we were on a time schedule and, like
Some realities
we're
here.
paying
Oh, yeah.
a lot of money for each day. I mean, all that kind of stuff. And I want to be good stewards of our time. But, I don't know how you do both of those things, but I think moving forward, how do we, and maybe even as a conference, and how do we teach our people? Like I felt like moving into the season, we don't know how to do discernment well anyway.
Yep.
And so how do we teach people to discern the voice of the Holy Spirit speaking? in the
I was going to
midst of
say,
this?
leaving room for the Spirit to
Yes.
work and move. Susan Beaumont has written a book, How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You're Going.
Yes,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
You've probably
It's a great
read that.
book.
Of like
Yes.
that
Read
whole
it
book
during
is
the
on.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Right?
It is, yeah.
With all
That
my
whole-
pastors, we read it.
That whole book is on community discernment because I felt that responsibility of like, I don't know how to do this. How am I supposed to lead them as a spiritual guide through this when I don't, we feel like this need to control and to fix and to appease and to please and to just like keep it moving. And sometimes I think we got to take a deep breath and relinquish that control a bit, trust, have some faith that
Yes.
all shall be well, right? All shall be well. We kind of interfere too much, right? And want to have our kind of agenda pushing,
Yes.
right? And I desire for us not to mirror this sort of two-party American political system of winners and losers and
Lord.
agenda pushing, right? Where it's because that just leads to the righteousness just becomes self-righteousness,
Oh, yeah.
right? And that feels icky as well,
Right.
It's,
I
I was at a church not long ago after General Conference, and I was just talking to them, really going forward for United Methodists, you're going to be a part of a church that has people that just agree to disagree and love with each other. And a gentleman spoke up. I won't call him a name, but he spoke up. He said, "That's what we've been doing for a long time." And he's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we've been doing for a long time. And we've removed, in my mind, we've removed the argument. I guess you can still argue, but there is space. The argument doesn't need to persist. I mentioned I'll be 40 years. It has been a perennial argument. I'm so tired of that.
Yeah.
I'd like to have some of my ministry before I hang it up in an atmosphere where we're going to lean into the relationships and understand that we have something that supersedes issues and opinions.
Yep.
That's right.
I mean, how beautiful is that? So,
I wonder, spiritual direction, discernment, like how can we best model that for our congregations, our local churches, and as an annual conference? That's going to give me a lot to think about. So thank y'all for that. I think there has to be a better way forward. I think Christ, we can go back to the biblical book here, does model that for us, but for us to take Jesus seriously at Jesus' word is just another step that does cause us to be humble, to listen, to be with. And so I appreciate that. This already is so good for my soul from two leaders I look up to help us to, hey, I'm 35, Jay, and we're pretty close here. And
thank you for that.
Still young clergy.
I'm holding on. I have 6 months of young clergy left.
Don't patronize me.
Oh my gosh.
But part of this is I have only known the church to be at war.
Yeah.
I've only known, I chose to be United Methodist, so I went to college at a United Methodist college and felt my call to ministry within that chapel setting. And had already been around people who vehemently disagree with each other, but still love each other, who still dine with one another. But I have we have experienced so much in the last 5 years and plus. But just 5 years of our ministry, I need a moment.
I've been a lead pastor for 5 years. I'm like, oh, is this the job? Is this always how it's like these past 5 years?
I got no nails left to chew off at this point. And so that's a reality here. But, gosh, what could this feel and do so good for our soul, for our denomination, for our annual conference, to engage in this, to grab a cup of coffee with somebody you disagree with, but you still love, to go and to serve. You just came back from a mission trip, I think, right, Jay?
Yeah, Stony Fort, Kentucky. Great people, wonderful folks.
That's awesome. Well, you did that with people you love and care about and serve people you love and care about.
Human sexuality never came up
the
whole week.
That's great.
Nobody cared what I thought about anything, except could I drive a nail in the right spot. They had to show me. I did after they showed me what to do. I can be taught things.
I'm
teachable.
Yes, coachable.
But part of this, we don't check our voter ID card at the door. We are in this together, and I believe the Holy Spirit is working within each one of you here in this room, and I trust that is going to continue to happen.
I think that's the key word, Rob, is in this time, this fractured time, we've not trusted each other. And so I think we're going to have to intentionally choose to trust.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
It is a choice.
It
is a choice.
And to assume the best about each other. Because I think we have quickly assumed the worst about each other. And we put each other in camps, and if they're in that camp, then that means they are in, XYZ. Instead of, no, I know Rachel. Like, I know her heart around this and around ministry and around Jesus, and not to make those assumptions about each other. One of the things that I have just come to just, I guess I'm tired of, is the old argument that one side does not believe in the Bible and the other side is not welcoming. And it's just not true. Neither one of those are true. And so how do we help our people? How do I help check my own assumptions at the door that, this is a person. This is the person I've known for a long, long time. And I'm not going to put the labels on them.
No. And in doing that,
and trusting them.
And doing that, we are answering Jesus' prayer for us.
Sure.
John 17, right? That you might be one as I and the Father are one. we don't just have prayer requests that we pray to God. We're on Jesus's prayer list, and his prayer list wants us to be one. And there's not a caveat there. There's not a footnote in case, of course, you run into a sticky wicket social issue down the road somewhere. Then by all means, no, that's a beacon to us. And
because truthfully, we could have picked any number of sticky social issues and divided over
There'll
it.
be another.
Right?
Heads up, spoiler alert. There will be. I don't know what it's going to be, but there will be one.
We picked this one because it became sort of a very, cultural thing, right?
It's what we do in our
more,
culture.
Yeah, we
find the most
responded,
divisive thing, and let's spend all our time and energy on that.
Yeah, but we could
That's
have.
how you get
I
elected.
could name some more if you'd like. I'm just kidding. We could have picked a lot of other
Episode
ones
2.
that honestly impact a lot more people, but we didn't. We didn't do that.
Right.
So,
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say what I am looking forward to is hopefully it's going to take a little time. Like all the pieces are still up in the air, and it's going to fall down, and we're going to get settled, and then we can be about continue to be about let's make disciples.
Right.
Let's help people
Kingdom.
come to know Jesus, come to grow in His love. I mean, like becoming more and more like Him. I'm ready to begin to have those conversations and equip people again of how to do that instead of being ready for war.
That's right.
So,
One of the things, Bishop Will Wilmon, we had him on the podcast not too long ago, and he's posted an article in a very Wilmon way of his hopes and dreams and disappointments in the world, which there are many. But one of this is, the reality is we're still an aging, dying denomination. That's the reality, right? Our average age keeps going up, and it shows no signs of going down in the near future. And so how do we now address that? So we have this contextualization as a part of what we're talking about here, and sort of how do we do this polity together? Okay, we're trying to figure those things out. We're trying to love each other. We're trying to show the world, hey, things can be better. Well, then how? This is a sinking ship we're on, and we're just battling at war on the ship. How do we change this now to focus on discipleship, evangelism, truly being an inclusive church to all people? Like, how do we get ourselves back around to the mission at task? Do you think you have hope for that?
I do. I have wondered, like, are all of the things that we have built up as our safety nets, are they being pulled away? And so that we really, we've said in my ministry of 25 years, not as long, Jay is 40,
Thanks
but
for pointing that out.
how we need to do things different. The church has to do things different, and yet we still go back to the same ways, the same things. I'm working on my doctorate of ministry, and I read a book that was written actually in the late 70s, The Problem with Wineskins, and he talks about things that I thought, this could be written today. I mean, like, however many years later. I mean, it's still the same things. We still spend a lot of time on our buildings and on programming and honestly on clergy. I mean, that's where most of our expenses go to. What if that all gets turned upside down?
Yeah.
And I know that's scary for us because that's all we've known. But maybe God's doing something new. And I'm here for it. Like I have so many years left, and I want to see kingdom work done in a different way. You know, than what we've been doing, and so that means we've got to lead in a different way.
I mean, things are changing, right? Not just because of things passed or removed at General Conference, but just our financial situation as a denomination. Our conference is half the size that it was. I mean, we are going to be forced to reform and make some changes. And I hope that we have the courage to dream new dreams, right? The courage to sort of say, we want to operate differently than the way that we always have. I mean, I'm in my 9th year. I'm finishing out my 9th year of full-time ministry in the Kentucky Annual Conference. And I remember conversations in seminary where people were going, well, I'm not going to start that yet or pursue ordination until this gets resolved or until this settles down. And I'm like, well, it'll probably be my whole career. So, but I think people our age, we've only known the church at war, like Rob has said, but we are ready and anxious to say, okay, but when are we going to start doing something new? Like we knew coming into this that it was kind of going to be a thing, right? And God's continuing to call, right? We have more that are going to be commissioned and ordained this year at annual conference, and it's
Glory.
will we listen to one another and have the courage? Like, it's scary. We're all vulnerable right now. We are hurt. We've lost colleagues and loved ones, and like family, have left the family, and it's been traumatic.
Yeah.
And I haven't sat on the cabinet, but it's been traumatic. And so we're in a very vulnerable place, and it is very scary. But will we have the courage that's required to say, okay?
And I'm a geek about our theology still, in my opinion, is what the world. I mean,
It's so good.
acts of mercy, acts of piety. I mean,
It's like our best kept secret is our theology.
Uncle Jay has a message for you, young folk. I mean, your generation, you're not going to go to a fight. You don't want to go to a fight.
Right.
You want to go somewhere where people are serious about making the kingdom of God more real on earth as it is in heaven. That, and I'm up for that.
Yeah.
I'm an old dude, but that's
because people our age and
that's where I wanna
younger,
be.
they're not attending church like
Right.
No,
like
they're not
older
gonna come
generations.
back
They're
to a
also
fight.
not giving,
Yeah.
right? They are not the 10% tithers just off the top. Like, they do not exist. Like our age and younger, like they want to give. If people are generous and they give to 10 different things they believe in that they think are having a social cause or an impact in the world. So we've got to not convince or market ourselves, but like get back to doing what we do best that actually impacts the world, that people get excited about. They don't want to come to meetings with Robert's Rules of Order and, serve on committees that they're not really sure why they function or what what they do. There's an appetite for that sort of, to actually look like Jesus, right?
Yeah.
The spiritual awakening to actually looks like Jesus. And so, not all hope is lost. We just got to remember the most important things and spend our time there.
Yeah.
Right? Spend our time and energy there.
preach. I need to come to y'all's churches. I'm
Come on, come
But again, I'm wondering, like, are we, will our grandchildren look back at this time as an opportunity that we stepped out in faith and did some bold things? I'm not talking about the issue. I'm talking about just in faith, did some bold things with the church.
Yeah.
They said several times at General Conference, make decisions that will impact the next 7 generations.
Yeah.
And that was just really helpful to get out of the moment in the situation. Like, what is going to be best? And so I'll tell you, I was part of the interjurisdictional Committee on Episcopacy. That's a mouthful. And so,
Sounds impressive.
It sounds like a
not
person
fit on a
there.
name tag.
We'll bleep it out.
Yeah, exactly. And so we make decisions around bishops. And we were having to make some hard decisions about the number of bishops. Because that has been the way we've always done it. But what it came down to, we reduced the number of bishops because we did not want to bankrupt the reserve funds that our children, grandchildren will, won't have if we decide to keep things the way they've always been. And so what that looks like going forward, I don't know. We don't have the answers around that, but we've got to make some of those hard, courageous decisions now so that so Coop can, your boys, my boys, they can live differently because of what we're doing.
Yeah, well, but I keep going back. Having kid changed a lot of things in my life, but some of it, will he be proud of the way, right, we led in this historical moment?
Yeah.
Will there be a church for him in the future? That can be haunting, but also a deep responsibility within us. Make sure. So thank you for
Energize
that
you.
perspective.
Get you up in the morning.
Yeah, really does.
Perhaps one last question. We'll get to our holy roast.
Sure.
Is what is your hope for?
No,
for
we're doing that part.
this was just getting. This is
We're
the
just
warm up.
getting started.
We're gonna roast you.
I got an appointment. Did I not tell you? I got a scoop.
But what's your hope for this annual conference in June? What's your hope, your desire? What do you like? And on your mind, you've been preparing for it, right? And part of this is things did happen, and so now we're about to be in the room again with each other. Not too long after you were just in that historical movement of a room. What's your hope for it?
You want to go first?
No, go ahead, Jen. Go
Well,
ahead,
it's annual conference for me. I've said this several times. It's about relationships, and so I'm looking forward to being together. And I think we need to be together. I think, as we've said, there's a lot of us hurting, feel very isolated during this time, especially those who are serving in areas where they're the only pastor, United Methodist pastor, in their county now,
right.
and they're used to have
lot of
several,
those.
and so.
Yeah.
They feel very isolated. So I'm looking forward to being together and just to say, we're going to make it. It's going to be okay. So that is my hope, and continue to listen. That's so hard. I heard this morning we listen for about 18 seconds.
Yeah.
And then we want to interject. We want to ask questions. We want to say our piece or whatever. And so just, how do we really listen to one another and just our thoughts and our fears and, all of that. So, yeah.
Hold it together. That's good.
Yeah. And I think Tami said earlier, may have been before we recorded, we agree on 95%. We just do. And why would we allow the 5% to just tear us apart, to keep tearing us apart? And so to be at conference, to celebrate one another, to celebrate where you see the kingdom of God breaking in. And that's one thing people think, oh, I feel sorry for you as a district superintendent. I get to see glimpses of it all the time in places that some of you have never heard of and don't think you could even get there. But it's there. And conference is a time to lift those up. And I hope that the oxygen in the room will not be consumed by, if people will step back, there's room.
Yeah.
There was space created. If you have eyes to see and ears to hear that, no one has to leave. No one has to feel like the church has left me.
Yeah.
Which is a very sad thing that some people might feel. But so I look forward to getting there and being with people, and the worship's always good, and the sermons are always challenging. And so,
let's be together.
let's be together. Right.
Really, yeah.
I like that. And so thank you, Tami and Jay, for being with us here today on the Holy Roast. This has been such a remarkable conversation for my own soul and my own mind to be at peace, peace, and to be with you. It's just been so good. So thank you so much for taking time.
Thank you for having
Our
me.
pleasure.
Yeah.
So now, like we have said, now it's time to roast you. And so if you thought we were getting good before, here it
Hot
goes.
seat.
But there'll be a series of questions that we always ask our guests here, and we're just going to go back and forth, one question, and we'll go back and forth. It'll be very good. So I'm just going to start, Tami, with question one. What are you reading right now?
It's a great question.
She's doing a D-man. She's reading all
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
Well,
You have to.
actually, I'm in that in-between space, and so I picked up a book I've wanted to read since it came out earlier this year, Practicing the Way, John Mark Comer.
So
And
good.
So,
John Mark.
so that, and I picked up another one, Gary Thomas, called Pure Pleasure. Just talks about how God's given us the gift of pleasure, and that we don't take advantage of that in a sense. We think that's sinful and, in some ways. And so, where's that abundant life?
Yeah, very good. Jay, what's keeping you alive right now?
My porch in Smiths Grove, Kentucky, which I'm going back to after we finish this. And I mean that. We live in the country.
Yeah.
And it's not just where we live, it's a sanctuary for me. And every time I pull up the drive, it's like I can breathe again.
Yeah.
And so mowing my yard, which I did yesterday, it takes me a couple of hours.
Wow.
It gives me life, of course, being with my wife, my son. But it's a real gift to live where we live and where I can just enjoy. We have deer and turkeys and all kinds of things around us, and it's a sanctuary for me.
That sounds great. 5 things on your nightstand, Tami. What are they?
Oh my!
Do you have a nightstand?
I do. I am not like our friend Lee. I do have a nightstand. Charger for phone, iPad, all that. Southern Living magazine. My 2 books. Usually my glasses. And is that good?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that
fine.
works.
Okay. I think
Or
that's
maybe we
about
haven't
it.
got bonus points on it. Your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Well, I kind of referenced it. You can't do it I would do it every day, but my wife would be really annoyed. I love mowing my yard. I've finished many a sermon on the lawnmower. And
Do
it's
you
just
ride or
relaxing.
push?
No, I ride. I got a big lawn 0 turn deal. So
Okay.
I cheat in that way.
You
But
got a big lawn too.
yeah, I got a big lawn. So it takes a couple hours, and so just if it's mowing day, I'm happy, and the weather's cooperating, I'm really happy. So other than that, just having silence, just unplugging, sitting on my porch, you know.
That's good. That's good.
Love that.
I'm going to ask this question to both of you now. So you're called up to bat and you have your walk-up song. What is that walk-up song going to be? What are they blaring through the speakers of the crowd that's going wild for you?
So y'all will not be surprised.
Oh my gosh,
He
here
let
it
the
comes.
dogs out. Sorry.
There had to be one reference to it, right?
I had to I went the whole time without
I know,
reference.
you're so good.
I know, I did really well. So yes, yeah.
Well, me being much more spiritual than
Of
Tami,
course.
of course.
Yes.
I love Tyler Childers,
Okay.
and I love his song "Way of the Triune God."
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And so that would be where I'd knock my cleats off and
There
step
you
in the
go.
box.
Yeah.
Way of
Nice.
the Triune God.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, thanks again for being
Thank
with
you
us.
all.
It's been a great
Yeah.
conversation. We'll see you at annual conference
pleasure.
and at the
See you
live
there.
recording.
Just a few weeks.
Keep up the good work. I love what y'all are doing. I really
Thank
do.
you.
Y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks.